Power Rangers Zeo is the fourth series in the Power Rangers franchise and the first time they decided to use brand new Sentai suits, presumably to make budgeting and production easier again. While this show isn't as remembered in the pop culture consciousness as MMPR, I still hear casual fans praise it and remember a lot of stuff that happened in it. Is the praise worth it? Or is it just another case of Zoomer yells at 90s TV show that boomers worship more than Jesus Christ? Let's find out as I review every Power Rangers Zeo episode. Episodes 1 and 2 introduce the villains for this season, the Machine Empire, as they run Rita and Zed out of town to conquer Earth for themselves. The Rangers also get the reward for the garbage Zeo quest arc they went on, the Zeo Powers, making this the first time the core suits of the show have changed, with this season using footage and aesthetics from O-Ranger. O-Ranger has a lot of its own history that warrants its own video in the future, so we won't focus on that here, but I freaking love the suits and mecha that come with that show, so I think this change was better, both aesthetically and for the franchise's longevity. This also marks Billy stepping down from being a Ranger, of him being tech support now, which could have always been planned, but given the awful behind-the-scenes production that we know about Zeo and the Saban era in general, it was probably out of malice towards his actor David Yost, which would culminate in him leaving the show later on this season, but we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. As for the two episodes themselves, they feel like a first draft for a really good episode, mostly the Rangers part. Rita and Zed escaping the Empire is fun, but the Ranger stuff doesn't have much weight outside of Billy stepping down and Zorda giving a speech about how the Rangers of old are dead and the Zeo Rangers will rise in their place. Then the Rangers fight a bunch of Machine Empire mooks known as the Cogs and keep doing what they normally do. This would be fine, but I think it would have been better if after they fought the mooks, they received a message from the Empire's commanders threatening them about stuff to better establish the conflict and prove they're at least a bit of a threat. We do get a taste of what the Machine Empire are like in their own scenes, being hoity-toity rich fellas, but I felt like keeping their interactions separate from the Rangers was a mistake that hurt the storytelling of this otherwise okay episode to start the season with. Episode 3 pretty quickly gets Tiny acquainted to this whole being an American teenager thing, which I think was for the best, because I don't trust the writing team as white as Saban's team to properly write about the implications of taking a young African kid, aging them up to a teenager, and making them fight a battle against evil from space. I know we're a season removed from that BS, but it still boggles my mind they did that, especially because, according to Aisha's actress, there was no reason given of why she needed to be replaced. Anyway, this episode was weird because Tanya tries to teach this boy a lesson about staying in school and studying for tests instead of playing sports, but the dude just learns this lesson off screen at the end of the episode, which is a weird way to handle a moral of the day plot. At least we get to the introduction of one of my favorite Megazords, the Zeo Megazord, which is a pretty cool debut battle, but otherwise this is a weak episode. Episode 4 is just a forgettable Rocky has a crush on a jerky girl plab, but what really stands out is the Megazord battle and how the monster sends the Megazord to the sun itself. This leads to the showcase of the Zeo Megazord switchable helmet gimmick, which lets other non-Red Rangers take control of the Megazord with their own unique powers, which is just icing on the already amazing cake that is this Megazord. Episode 5 starts with a wacky slapstick motorcycle scene of Bulk and Skull, which is more motorcycling action than most Heisei Combinator shows. The main plot of this episode is that Tommy and Kat have to pretend to be married to take care of a child for a school assignment, which their friends find the peak of comedy, something I can't judge as a fan of 21st century humor. The Machine Empire decides to infect the baby's screams to make his cries cause earthquakes, and I surprisingly didn't hate this episode. In fact, it's probably my favorite episode so far, oddly enough, of how ridiculously funny it is, mixed with some really good action scenes. In general, the action scenes took a major step up this season, especially the original footage. Episode 6 was mostly a boring baseball episode, except for a moment at the end where Tanya breaks up with her boyfriend because he's been a jerk to her these last few episodes. For a show as squeaky clean and Christian friendly as early Power Rangers, it was cool to see them acknowledge toxic relationships and seeing one of my main characters realize that it's better to break off than continue wasting your time on a person that isn't worth it. Episode 7 focuses on a dog, which makes this episode pretty good automatically. There really isn't a lesson in this episode outside of flexing how cool and helpful police dogs can be, which conflicts me because on the one hand, police, but on the other hand, doggy. I'll get back to you on this if we reach SPD. Episode 8 is Bulk and Skull bully a child. This one was really boring despite having a cool concept of a children's entertainer themed villain. Episode 9 is a surprisingly funny episode about the behind the scenes of movie making, which is kinda meta since this episode adapts O-Ranger's movie. It's also the episode that cements Rocky's goofball personality, which is something we only saw glimpses of in MMPR. Honestly, I'm glad that Zeo's Rangers have more defined personality traits than Good Samaritan that knows karate, like Tommy being the brave leader, Adam being the straight man muscle, Rocky being a goofball, Tanya being the newbie to the team, and Catherine having compassion. Yeah, the characters had defined personality traits in the first season of MMPR, but as the seasons went on and the cast began to change, it felt like they were just vessels for whatever the writers wanted to do instead of actual characters. Episode 10 has Billy graduating high school early, then immediately pissing off to space to stop those damn alien rangers from dying to hydrocontaminators. It's an okay episode, but knowing that David Yost was bullied off the show later on during the behind the scenes of this season makes it feel like a quick attempt to get him off the show. The actual send-off is much worse, but we'll get to it towards the end of this show. Episode 11 is an infamous episode where Rocky makes a plant that eats metal and becomes a plant himself, which doubles his goofball personality. It's a fun one-off, but it's it's oddly placed in the season after we just had a rushed and possible final goodbye to a cast member who's been on the show since the beginning. Episode 12 has Adam forced to take classical music because he's taking a creative writing class too many times, which is possibly one of my worst nightmares come to pass if I was in Adam's shoes. Adam takes a class of Skull where he learns about Skull's passion for the piano, a passion he kept hidden in fear of being made fun of by others, specifically Bulk. This is a standout episode, and the moment where Skull plays the piano and Bulk compliments his talent is one of the most beautiful moments in the season. Episode 13 has one of the characters mentioning discussing politics on the internet, and I'm not even joking. To be honest, this episode felt like more of an ad for the internet than an actual Power Rangers episode, but at least the slapstick was okay. Episode 14 has Billy coming back to Earth after his work trip on Aquatar, but the Machine Empire will not stand for such things, so they try to sabotage his efforts. It's quite a tense episode, as at one point, the Empire tries to send Billy to the freaking sun! It's oddly enough the episode that makes me buy the bonds between the Rangers the most. Episode 15 is our first multi-part storyline. There's no business like snow business, and this is an infamous one thanks to the setup. Tommy receives a letter from Kimberly where Kim breaks up with Tommy. Now, I have never been in a romantic relationship, so take everything I say about this plot with a grain of salt, but I did have one of the craziest laughs in a while when a cheesy 90s music video AMV about Tommy and Kim's relationship played. These episodes have Tommy try to cope and rebound from the breakup, ultimately ending in a romantic dance with Catherine, which I don't think was the wisest move. I'm okay with Tommy and Kat getting together, but I immediately think getting a new girlfriend after a breakup is kinda unhealthy and not a great message to send to kids. Other than that, I really didn't care for these episodes, but hey, we got some funny moments of the citizens of Angel Grove falling in love with everyday appliances. Episodes 18 through 21 I'm lumping together because despite not being a multi-parter, they all have the same storyline. And oh boy, what a story it is! This is the storyline where Tommy Oliver, played by the white as hell Jason David Frank, is connected to stereotypical Native American vision quest and tropes. Not only does this racist storyline last 4 episodes, because 4 episodes too many, but this was a remaining plot thread from Alien Rangers, meaning that show's god-awfulness is seeping into this one. It's such a tone-deaf and insensitive string of episodes that feel like a major step back from what was a pretty fun show up until this point. And don't it's the 90s me about it. It wasn't right back then, and it's not right now. Screw these episodes, let's move on. Episode 22 is Rocky learning to treat people with disabilities normally, which as someone of ADHD and autism is a great message for kids to learn. I'm a bit mixed on the blind characters they decide Rocky needs to learn the message from though, as they do play to a few blind people have heightened senses tropes, but then again it shows that even if you have a disability you can still do great things. A solid episode overall. Episode 23 is a Halloween episode, and a very creative one at that. While it does end up being a dream sequence with Adam, there's so much fun and surprising dread to be had as Adam meets kooky yet spooky characters and gets confronted by his fears of failure. It doesn't even end happily, it ends with Adam losing, which is very unique for a Power Ranger story. Episode 24 is Bulk trying to flirt with a fellow police officer, but gets into hijinks which ends up with Bulk, Skull, and Lieutenant Stone getting fired, but Stone has decided to continue helping others through his own private detective agency. It's a cool change to their status quo, but it's kinda sudden and not the kind of episode I expect for a shakeup like this to happen in. Episode 25 is Tanya doing stuff with her music career, and it was okay. I don't really have a strong opinion either way on this episode, it's just an episode where the Rangers fight evil and Tanya sings, with not many interesting elements to it. Same goes for episode 26 where Adam trains for a Kung Fu tournament. Episodes 27 to 29 I'm bundling together because they're all basically the same episode, structure-wise. The Rangers are in a pickle, a brand new Gold Ranger helps them, they win, we end the episode with one of the Rangers' friends who was mysteriously absent coming back to further set up mystery about who Gold is. It's kind of comical how it happens with 3 different guys in the span of 3 different episodes. At least the Gold Ranger's introduction is cool, but outside of that, I really didn't care for these episodes, even on their own merits. Though one of the episodes did have a subplot about Bulk and Skull trying to make coffee, and I was joking all the way through that they were actually making drugs, so there's an amusing side note for you. Episode 30 is probably the most relatable high school plot Power Rangers has done. Everyone falls asleep due to the exhaustion of everyday life. Episode 31 didn't do much of note. Episode 32 to 33 revealed the identity of the Gold Ranger, Trey of Triforia, who can't be the Gold Ranger anymore, so they transfer the power to a returning cast member, Jason, which is admittedly a pretty cool twist on the roles of the MMPR days where Jason was the leader and Tommy was the sixth. We also get the debut of the Super Zeo Zords, which are pretty cool since they have more battle functionality on their own, though I prefer the original Zeo Megazord aesthetically. It's a decent set of episodes. Episode 34 is Rocky worried about his spot on the team since Jason is back, which makes sense due to Rocky being the second MMPR Red Ranger, which leads him to take on King Mondo one-on-one and losing until he gets the support of his team. It's a seemingly simple episode, but I find it oddly relatable as someone who's starting to work with talented people I admire. It's easy to think you're lesser than those friends, but usually they're lucky to have you as a friend too, and I think that's a fantastic message. Episode 35 is Jason making friends with a new girl in town, which is not important because this episode is the introduction of Louis Kaboom! Possibly the greatest name Power Rangers has come up with for a character next to Void Knight, and he's a fun guy to boot. Episode 36 is a fun episode where the characters prepare for a modeling show, and by God, I'm savoring the fits in this episode because for once the characters are dressed like they're going to Sunday school. Episode 37 has Arik in it, who I keep forgetting exists in the Power Rangers universe, which is a shame because he's a cool character even if he's just another flavor of Ninjor. It also has possibly some of the rawest acting I've seen in the series to this point, where Tanya reunites with her parents. Episode 38 is the episode where the Gold Rangers turned gold. Episode 39 has the awesome introduction of Prince Gasket and his wife Archerina, who are entertaining yet competent villains as they send Louis Kaboom to his demise and take over the Machine Empire. However, Tonal Whiplash is on the loose in this episode as a prankster is invading Angel Grove, which is really a funny plot line. Episodes 40 through 42 make up the King for a Day arc, where Tommy is brainwashed into becoming the king of the Machine Empire. Boy, it probably says something about me if I like Tommy more as the villain than the hero character. I mean, in the Boom Studios comic books, I hate Lord Draken post-Shadowed Grid, but before that, he was an interesting meta-commentary on Tommy's overexposure while being badass in his own right. Also, minor nitpick, they should have put a king crown on his ranger suit when he's brainwashed, so when he's unbrainwashed, he could just take off the crown and smash it. Even Bulk and Skull have a great subplot in the arc, getting kidnapped by the Machine Empire and hanging out with an alien bro, which makes me wish Bulk and Skull plots had more connection to the main Ranger plot more often. Unfortunately, this arc is also the last appearance of David Yost on Power Rangers, as his character Billy would be written out of the show later. The reason he apparently left was due to bullying over his homosexuality by other staff members, which was never okay and must have been awful knowing what we now know about Saban's awful working conditions. The character would appear again, but without David Yost playing the role, but we'll get to that in a bit. Episode 43 is a decent execution of a time loop episode, but nothing that mind-blowing or special. Episode 44 is a murder mystery episode that feels a bit lacking. I mean, it's not even a mystery. It feels like they just had the idea, they had the costumes and set, but didn't feel like writing an interesting mystery and just made another charity party episode. Episode 45 is the episode where Tommy and Tanya sing most of their lines, which is probably the closest we're getting to a musical episode till Beast Morphers, but even then that's just one musical number. This probably caused a lot of vocal shit on the actors, and I hope there's a lot of water on set to help them film this funny and iconic episode. Episodes 46 and 47 are the first Power Rangers crossover episode, and it's one of the weakest ones for many reasons. As a crossover between Alien Rangers and Zeo, there's not much interaction between the two teams, mainly because Alien Rangers have no personality to begin with. In fact, only two of them show up in this episode out of suit, and the other reason is that this is the episode where they write Billy out by explaining that he needs to go to Akatar or else he was going to rapidly age to death. What really grinds my gears about the end of the episode is that Billy ends up with an Akatar woman by the end, which feels like an insult to David Yost knowing what we know now. Even though I wasn't the biggest Billy fan, he was a lot of fans' favorite from the Zordon era, and he deserved a better send-off than this. Episode 48 pisses me off because Mondo just comes back and bullies Gasket into running away, despite Gasket being a way cooler villain than Mr. Big Bot over there. Goodbye, sweet prince and his hot robot wife. Episode 49 is the Christmas episode. That isn't really remarkable until a flash-forward scene of Tommy and Catherine as old people. Episode 50 is the final episode of Zeo, and despite the lack of build-up or even resolution to the fight against evil, it's a pretty fitting season finale as Jason transfers his Zeo powers back to Trey, who lets the Rangers grow giant to defeat King Mondo once and for all. Also, Zed and Rita declare that they're back, in a scene that should fall under poorly aged TV moments. Zeo is a marked improvement over MMPR, even if it does have some dud episodes, and the Native American Tommy arc being one of the worst produced things the franchise has done, period. Luckily, the rest of the show is quite entertaining, with creative one-off plots, more defined characteristics for the Rangers, better original action direction, and the best Power Rangers soundtrack ever. The Machine Empire are okay villains. I like the snobby kid of the bunch, but I don't like Mondo that much, and I'm still salty that the final villain wasn't Gasket, since he was a much better villain in almost every respect. Overall, I can see why Zeo's a fan favorite season, but it still has a lot of problems holding it back for me. But I can actually recommend people watch this show with a slightly more clear conscience. Slightly, you might want to do some episode curation. After this break, we'll be coming back to Power Rangers with one of the most disliked seasons of the franchise, Power Rangers Turbo.